The following program contains the views and opinions of the host, speakers, and participants. They do not reflect the policies of the producers, advisors, and advertisers of AU Paws Radio, including Adelphi University's Board of Trustees, administrative faculty, or its affiliates. Paws web radio station encourages freedom of speech, but does not endorse any specific viewpoints or messages. Listener discretion is advised, especially for potentially sensitive or controversial topics. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Earle Lab, where we talk about all things neuroscience here at Adelphi. This is your host Hemish, a junior molecular neuroscience major. Our last episode, we talked about how we can improve studying habits and specifically memorization. And in that episode, I briefly touched upon how sleep is really important for that process. I decided what's more important, or what I should say is probably the bane of every college student, than getting enough sleep. So we're going to dedicate a whole episode to sleep today. I also thought that last episode was a little bit too content focused. I felt like it sounded like I was some sort of like neuroscience professor. So I'm going to sort of stray away from the more, like heavy information side and just kind of be a little bit more casual, just sort of like have a one-on-one talk. So we're going to start off with some basics about sleep that some of you, maybe most of you might know, but it's just important to, as a jumping off point. So obviously we know about circadian rhythms, right? That is the patterns of our body's natural sleep cycle when we feel tired, when we feel awake. So depending on time of day, the amount of sunlight that our bodies are receiving, our brain emits delta waves. These are the waves that make us feel sleepy. That's typically when there's no sunlight, and then when we do have sunlight, they emit other waves that make us feel energetic, ideally, and ready to take on the day. So I bring this up because people, of course, have different sleep patterns. And some of that is kind of innate. We each have our very own unique biological clock. So some people may be naturally more accustomed to going to bed a little bit early, waking up early, the early morning risers. And some people might be more naturally accustomed to sleeping in, waking up late in the mornings, our night owls. And I definitely fall into that latter category. So there is no right bedtime or right circadian rhythm. Everyone's different. And the first step to getting better sleep is to sort of recognize, okay, which category do I fall into, right? Do I naturally get tired a little bit early, or do I naturally want to stay up late, enjoy the night, and then wake up a little bit later in the morning because I don't like early mornings. That's the first step. Now, from there, we can decide, okay, let's say that I am a late owl, right? But I have an 8 a.m. lecture tomorrow for biochem. Let's go. Now what? Am I done for? Well, here's what we can do, first of all, to get better sleep at night. You might have heard some of these already. Some of these might be some more surface level stuff again. But I'll try my best to go in depth and make it make sense. So first, avoid sources of blue light. Blue light has kind of become this big bad boogeyman in modern neuroscience discussions when it comes to sleep. There is good reason for it. Blue light, which is the light emitted from obviously any sort of screen, right? Your phone, obviously, your laptop, your TV, just anything of that nature, can disrupt your sleep patterns. The light can sort of, mimic the effects of daylight, real sunlight, which will cause your brains to not emit delta waves or emit them later. And as a result, you go to bed later, you don't feel as tired. So an easy fix around this, obviously some people will say, well, just don't use your phone or don't use your laptop. But when you have assignments due, that's easier said than done. What I like to do, I like to download programs on my computer or on my phone that limits blue light. So I think most Android and iPhones will have this feature where you can set a blue light timer. So after 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., it automatically puts sort of an orange blue light filter on your phone. It doesn't look the best, but at least that way you're sort of reducing eye strain and you're not feeling like you want to tackle the entire world at 3 a.m. motivation at 8 p.m., right? Another option for those of you who wear glasses, you can obviously spec for a blue light filter on your glasses, which will just be a natural cure, obviously. Or you can also buy glasses on Amazon. They're $10 that just have blue light filters and they don't have any prescription. I know some of my friends use that. And they say that they've been able to, after they get an assignment done like really late at night, like at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., they can go to bed and fall asleep pretty quickly, as opposed to taking like a whole hour to fall asleep. Another option you can do if you find yourself lying in bed, right, and you cannot fall asleep no matter what, you don't even feel like you're getting drowsy, get out of bed and do something. Studies have shown that when you begin to associate feelings of being in bed with feelings of awake and alertness, your brain sort of terminates the connection between sleeping or being in your bed and drowsiness. And that's really bad, of course, because when you no longer condition your bed as like the stimulus that makes you feel all sleepy and tired, and you just want to like knock out for the day, you're gonna just naturally take longer to fall asleep no matter what you do, no matter how much sleep you get the night before, no matter what you do to help yourself fall asleep, it's just not gonna work out. So get up out of bed. Don't stay in there any longer. Maybe like if you can't fall asleep after like 30, 45 minutes, get out for a little bit, and then spend 10 minutes just doing some sort of activity, just to sort of change up your rhythm. That can include maybe you can like get like a snack, drink some water, do some reading, of course. Although, of course, most reading is done on devices, so make sure you have the blue light filter on. If you have the space available, you can do a quick light workout. This is actually one of my favorite things. You can do maybe like 5 or 10 push-ups, a few sit-ups, a few squats. Nothing too crazy. Obviously, of course, doing any physical activity, any sort of that performance, will naturally get your brain to, or get your body, I should say, to fall asleep quickly. Your muscles get tired, you feel fatigued, and you'll fall asleep quicker. So basically, to summarize, avoid blue light and get up out of bed if you can't sleep. Yap to a friend, FaceTime to a friend if you need to. Just make sure you're not bothering them from sleeping. And yeah, just do whatever you can to avoid your brain, again, we call it extinction, terminating that connection between the stimulus of your bed and that conditioned response of feeling sleepy. A brief note on taking naps. So naps are both a blessing and a curse when it comes to maintaining good sleep. They're helpful if you didn't get much sleep the night before and you really need to have sharper cognitive performance. Maybe you need to study for a big exam the next day. Maybe you need to do really well on an assignment that's due tonight. In that case, yeah, absolutely. Taking naps help, and they help a lot. They prevent grogginess, and at least for the next few hours when you're awake, they lead to better performance. The optimal duration for a nap is definitely, I would say, between 30 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. 30 minutes is like the minimum so that you can feel some sort of restfulness when you're awake. A little bit longer than like your typical power nap. And if you go beyond that 1 hour, I'd say 1 hour and a half threshold, then you risk not being able to fall asleep at your regular time, going to bed much later, and you disrupt your sleep schedule for subsequent days. So you're going to have to assess on your own accord the benefits and risks of taking a nap at that time. Do you really need to take a nap? If you have an assignment, maybe that's like completion based or isn't really that important for your overall grade, I would say do your best to skip the nap and just focus on going to bed at your regular time or a little bit early that night. If you really do need to take a nap, try to set an alarm for like around like an hour or so, so that way you can still get good rest, good sleep the night after. And also, if you do take a nap and you have trouble falling asleep and you find yourself wake up in the middle of the night, it is normal to wake up in the middle of the night. Tying it back to the beginning where I talked about circadian rhythms and delta waves. So a natural part of the human circadian rhythm is that we feel a little bit of alertness late at night. You might have heard the story about how the Romans and the Greeks used to like wake up at like 4 a.m., do stuff like an hour, then go back to sleep. That's because according to our biological clocks, we do experience those feelings of alertness, those specific frequencies from our brains that make us feel a bit energetic. This is also the cause of 3 a.m. motivation. Which can be an interesting phenomenon for many people. So yeah, again, just like what I said before, get out of bed, use the restroom. If you want to like take a quick snack, maybe like read something, watch something real quick. Again, just whatever you need to do so that way when you go back to bed, you feel tired and you can fall asleep very swiftly. One other thing that I forgot to mention earlier, it's okay to take a while to fall asleep, right? If you fall asleep within like 2 to 5 minutes of going to bed, that means you're sleep deprived, and it's not necessarily the norm. For most people, the average time it takes to fall asleep once they hit their bed, I would say, is probably around 15 to 20 minutes, or maybe like around 10 to 15. Depends. But yeah, don't feel as if you don't fall asleep right away that you have to like get up and go like zooming around at like 2 a.m. and like surfing your whole neighborhood. Just give it some time. As long as you start to feel like the sleep is setting in, you're good. On to waking up. So let's say that you're a night owl, right? You try some of the methods that I listed, but you still only maybe manage like 6 hours of sleep. Now what? Well, first of all, for some people, 6 hours might actually be enough. So I mentioned like, innate biological clocks. Well, tying into that, some people can be ready to tackle like the entire world after like 5 to 6 hours. Well, not 5, but I would say minimum 6 hours of sleep. Some people might need upwards of 8 to 9. So again, you're gonna have to figure out how much sleep you need depending on how you feel when you wake up after certain times. And when I mention how you feel, I don't just mean like immediately after waking up, but how you feel throughout the whole day. Because sometimes you might feel really energetic waking up after 4 hours of sleep, and you might feel sleepy waking up after 8 hours. But then as the day progresses, you feel like you're like a blob of jello with the 4 hours of sleep. But then with the 8 hours, you gradually get better and better. That has to do with the phase of sleep you wake up out of. If you sleep for 4 hours and you wake up out of a phase of sleep that isn't like deep sleep, it isn't REM sleep, so you're not dreaming and all that, then you feel well rested because the body doesn't like to be disturbed when it's in that deep sleep. But if you get 8 hours of sleep but wake up right after the phase where you were like in the middle of a dream, so you're in deep sleep, then that's like more sudden abrupt change for your body and for your brain, and that's where you wake up groggy. So take some time to reflect and assess how you feel right after a whole day based on that amount of sleep. And then from there you can decide, okay, I can set my alarm for this time and get 6 hours of sleep, or set my alarm for this time and make sure I get 8 hours of sleep. Okay, now going back to waking up. Let's say that you did all of that, you know what time, how much sleep you need, strategies to help you sleep earlier, but you wake up and you just cannot get through. You have an 8 a.m. lecture or an 8 a.m. lab, 8 a.m. 5-hour Orgo lab. Let's go. Shout out to all the people taking Orgo. And you just cannot like go through it at all. You're just sort of like treating the day as a chore rather than actually going, like living through it. How can you improve that? Well, a big part of being able to get through your morning is having a peaceful, drawn out morning procedure. So if you're waking up and you don't give yourself time to get ready or to commute or to head to class, you're constantly rush. From the moment you wake up, you're stressed out. Your brain is releasing stress hormones, and it prohibits you from resting. And now when you finally do stop being stressed later on, right, a sudden wave of fatigue hits you at once as your brain and your body tries to recover from that early morning stress. So big thing, avoid that. One method of doing that is that you can simply set your alarm clock 5 to 10 minutes earlier. Give yourself a little bit extra time to drive to class. Give yourself a little bit extra time to get ready, take a shower, make breakfast, all of that. Because 5 to 10 minutes that you give yourself to prepare, and as a result decrease your stress, is much more valuable than what 5 to 10 minutes of sleep could give you. Obviously, I'm speaking based off of studies, but also based off of personal experience. It does go a long way. And then another thing that I feel kind of gets demonized, even though it's really helpful, is snoozing your alarm. When you snooze your alarm, you are able to gradually go from a state of sleep to a state of being awake and alert. So it gives your brain time for, that like all those like consolidation neural pathways to sort of like come alive, right? You give your own self time to get out of your initial grogginess and become alert without feeling like you're gonna have to like cut 10 people off on the highway to make it to class on time, right? So snooze, this kind of goes back to when I mentioned waking up 5 minutes earlier. Set an alarm that's around 10 minutes earlier than what you'd usually set it, and give yourself time to snooze it, maybe like once or twice. So that way you're gradually waking up And it's especially true if you find yourself waking up from deep sleep. So like when you're dreaming, you're gradually waking up, you're gradually getting rid of that grogginess. When you do wake up, you're alert, you have time to get ready, so you're not going to school all panicked and nervous and anxious. And studies have shown that this greatly increases your mental performance. Your brain's more sharp, to put it simply. Your cognitive performance and abilities are drastically improved, and that reflects in your performance to carry out a lab, or maybe you have an early exam. I'll end off by talking about caffeine. So obviously, a lot of students, no surprise, rely a lot on caffeine to get through their mornings, especially since sleep is not always a given, understandably so. And I just want to say, don't feel bad if you rely on caffeine. According to official guidelines by the FDA, healthy adults, so those 18 over, can consume about 400 milligrams of caffeine a day and be fine. That's like a healthy limit. It does vary from person to person, but 400 is around that like general average. To put that into context, a cup of coffee is around 80 milligrams, and a can of Celsius is around 200 milligrams. So you can drink 2 cans of Celsius, or about 5 cups of coffee in a day, and not exceed on that limit. So then, again, don't vilify caffeine. If you need it to help you start off your morning, that's fine. The only thing I would say to be wary of is to try to not always be on that limit each and every single day. Because while caffeine addiction is not necessarily, I would say, an issue for most people, if you are always at that limit or beyond that limit on a daily basis, right, it serves as a signaling molecule between neurons and synapses. So, with an excess of caffeine, your neurons, your synapses become desensitized. This is called habituation in psychology. They become desensitized, and your synapses therefore don't fire as often. When they receive caffeine as a neurotransmitter, they're less likely to fire because of just how much they've been receiving it. And when they're less likely to fire, caffeine is less likely to take in effect. This is true for all addictive substances. So obviously caffeine isn't addictive, but it just has that potential to result in feelings of tiredness if you abuse it. So everything in moderation is a good mantra to live by. All right. I think that's basically it for sleep. The bottom line is focus on what your innate sleep pattern is, right? Do you naturally go to bed late? Do you naturally go to bed early? How many hours of sleep do you need to feel good throughout the whole day? Maybe are you on your screen too much before going to bed? Are you feeling awake while in your bed? Do you wake up really stressed, really anxious? Do you take too many naps? All of these, or do you drink too much caffeine, or do you drink not enough caffeine? All these are factors to take in mind when determining how to get better sleep. And of course, sleep will always be an issue so long as we're in college for many college students. But I hope that the big takeaway from this episode is that there are things that you can do to be more aware of how to get better sleep. And some of these methods are not that bad. They're not like these groundbreaking changes in lifestyle. They're just being a little bit more mindful. So that's it for me. I've been your host, Hemish. This has been another episode of the Earle Lab. And always remember to mind up each and every single day. All right, see you guys next week. Take care.